What the fuck? All right. I don't know. Vyrah reporting for duty. Another time together. We are gonna do some React. It's so I feel so shameful to do the React content, but you know, basically I need to watch YouTube. You watch YouTube with me. That's how I cope. That's my copium. That's my copium for that. Some interesting things that I want to watch. Let's get into it, right? Something. Right. Let me just not transition dead. No. Okay. It's the wrong camera. Right, what the fuck? What the fuck? All right. Right. Okay. So let's start off by actually checking if everything. Okay. So let's check out this. Okay, so sound is nice. Everything works. It's recording. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, boy Tyler, quite a legend. I really love this content creator. He does a lot of World of Warcraft AI generated lore videos. If you do not know him, you should check it out if you care about World of Warcraft lore. It offers like an image to actually like the stuff that you read anyway, right? If you care about lore. I know that like we're three caring about the lore, and that like the third one that actually like cared about the lore of WoW actually switched for Final Fantasy. Like, but for you, my dear viewer, well, it's really awesome. So Death Knight. I play Death Knight in World of Warcraft. Favorite class, Death Knight. Let's check out. Wow. Let's just check this out.
Death Knights were once the paragons of their people, champions who fell honorably in battle, only to be dragged back into the world by the Scourge. Their souls were bound, wills erased. They were left with only obedience and hate. In this state, they reveled in slaughter, cutting down former friends and allies without pause. When the Lich King's dominion faded, freedom arrived with a flood of horrific memories. Every scream, every betrayal, every blade driven into familiar flesh, crashing back upon them. Now traitors twice over, they walk the world as pariahs, clad in black steel. They seek atonement, knowing they will forever be monsters, wearing the faces of fallen heroes. 1,000 atrocities are etched into the eyes of each Death Knight. Any foe unfortunate enough to gaze into them will feel all warmth pulled away, as if by the very clutch of death itself. Frost, blood, and unholy form the triumvirate of power that shapes the Death Knight, each mastery forged in torment and perfected through discipline. Frost is the domain of icy precision and emotionless lethality. Frost Knights channel the wicked chill of Northrend itself, their freezing blades sheathed in rime, their strikes sharp and surgical. They fight with a chilled demeanor to expose weakness. Each strike is placed deliberately to inflict the most pain. Through a bleak calm, they employ a storm of force to cut enemies to the bone. To wield Frost is to embrace a calculated evil. It is an icy edge, veiled in blinding cold. They are tacticians of torture, freezing blood in veins before plunging steel in sinew. Blood is far more visceral, born from the corruption of the heart. Blood Knights use their unnatural vitality as both weapon and shield. They thicken tendons at will and reknit their own torn flesh. Every strike endured only strengthens the Blood Knight. Every wound suffered converted to hot fuel. They are juggernauts who refuse to fall, drinking in damage as sustenance, unwilling to falter, unable to die. They are dark guardians who manipulate life's very essence in the face of relentless onslaught. With pulsing hatred and collar deep, the Blood Knight cares little from where the blood flows, only that it flows at all. Finally, unholy is the rotting face of the Scourge. They embody tainted life and necromantic dominance. Unholy knights marshal disease, wielding plague as chains to bind armies of the dead to their will. Their servants swarm, claw, and overwhelm as an extension of the Unholy Knight's malice. The Unholy Knight turns the ground into a churning mass of grasping limbs and gnashing teeth. Where they stride, the battlefield spills open its wounds, a tide of unstoppable death. The world was never meant to endure the Death Knight. They are without feeling, without warmth, and without the luxury of forgetting. The Death Knight is a shadow of a life extinguished, an echo of a soul stolen. They are a contorted reflection of a hero, shaped into service and unable to rest. They wander the world as unwelcome guardians, half legend, half warning, bearing rune blades that hum whispers of pilfered existence. Kingdoms bar their gates. Priests clutch their relics. Old comrades turn away. But the Death Knight continues, unsoftened by mercy, unburdened by fatigue, driven only by vengeance. They are wrath given form, regret given armor, and revenge given a sliver of redemption.
Wow. So thank you, yeah, boy Tyler. I love the fact that he talks about the different specializations, the different talents of the Death Knight, and represent them with different characters. I think that this is something really, really cool. And the fact that he was able to make a Worgen Death Knight look awesome, this is quite the thing. This is quite the thing. Because like it is known that that for example Artus is mostly a Frost Death Knight with a unholy power, right? but not a Blood Death Knight. And Lanatel armies are more about blood. Well, Lanatel is not even a Death Knight, it's pure vampire. And I think that like it's really he renders it so well. He made it like really look great. It's really awesome. It's really something. If you did not know, yeah, boy Tyler, offer him a sub, offer him a like, and yeah, if you like WoW lore videos. I want Smoky Eye tutorial, not gonna lie, I suck at it. I should just randomly like checked out all you do it, but the stuff, and basically like I do the stuff, and I don't even know. I just I saw oh my fucking god. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much. Let's go for the hype train. We're only two. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, like I hope you're doing great. Like you're actually like, if you didn't know, I'm getting paid for like the ads and stuff, but like the payout on Twitch is after like every $50 that you make. Basically, like I'm getting closer to the $50 to actually like pay, like to actually like get a payday, which is actually like such a thing when it's kind of like when you do music, you know, like. You know, when you get your first paycheck doing music. I've been doing music. Actually, my first paycheck was doing like music. So getting a paycheck from Twitch is something absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. What's a hype train? A hype train is like right now we're on a timer, and usually a hype train is like if people gift more subs, usually it doesn't happen when we're only two, you know. Give more subs, we get like more levels of hype train basically, and that's pretty much how it goes. But yeah, by the way, we can chat, we can call, we can talk after that. Oh my fucking god. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I actually do not know how to react. By the way, look at all the fake accounts that became subbed. Like, look at the name VRH. Like, there's like a bunch of things. But thank you so much. Thanks. But yeah, no, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know how to react to this. But oh my fucking god, I'm getting closer to my legends. Thank you so much. Let's keep on going. Oh my. Actually, something that like it might not be completely like foreign for you. It's important to never give up. Yeah, I actually do not want to. I'm actually like kind of stuck at not giving up actually. Like because basically like now I'm used to it, and there's a lot of things that like but yeah, like the next thing I want to react actually is something that you even like might care about. Like let's check this out. So let's check out the strange history of the offspring. The offspring, everyone knows the offspring. You must like at least one of their songs, for real, for real. Let's check this out. Like, I'm actually really curious. I actually really want to know their story. What camera am I using? I'm actually using a Canon, really good camera. Canon. I have like two, basically. Basically, like when I was like doing wait. So basically, like I'll show you like this. So I have two cameras, and this is actually wait. I gotta buy a camera. Oh, I can help you with that. Wait, my camera crashed. Give me 1 second. Camera crashed. Let's go with God. OBS. Okay. Right. I can, so yeah, I have actually two cameras, and when I was doing concerts, like I want to go back to this, doing like concerts, like you'll see there's like a switch that keeps on, like there's a switch, and I have like actually 2 point of views that like just switch over time. You're about to see it. When it comes to cameras, I will actually give you, like, there's a camera, the second camera that I use is really cheap, and is really like the best camera for your buck. Let me just get it out for you. Yeah, see, like basically like it does the, yeah. Oh, it's not even 100. Oh my, yeah, it's basically this camera. The problem right now, the problem is the only thing is that there's the lighting. Like basically, like my LED lights makes it like look not good. But basically, like this is like if I turn off this camera is actually like best thing that you can buy for like a webcam, like for real. Wait. Do you know what I can do? I can do something cool. Wait. I can open that website. Can you send the name of the camera fully? Because we don't have Amazon in here. Oh. Okay. Yeah. So wait. I can actually do something nice. As a thank you. Like, where is it? Community. Role manager. Add new. And here you go. Try to type something. You're officially a VIP in here. It doesn't mean much. That's all I can do to thank you, alright? Yeah. I can do much more than make you a VIP, but I found a way to say thank you. Alright. No, thank you. Alright. Well, let's keep on going. I wanted to react to, yeah, let's go back to actually content. All right. So, is my okay. Oh, I can actually like show you something right now if you want. Oh my fucking god, can I? Pretty sure I can. Like, it's actually 12. My camera froze. Oh my fucking god, it did again? Oh my fucking god. Alright. Yeah, yeah, for sure tomorrow. Tomorrow I can show you that. Alright. So I kind of like need to keep to do the thing so for the VOD it looks good. Alright. Let me get my cigarette. So, ever heard of the offspring? I've heard of the offspring. The story of the offspring? I didn't heard though. Let's react to the strange history of the offspring. If you do not know, the punk rock MBA, it's he is a YouTuber, a content creator that actually does like a lot of history about like rock bands and stuff like that, and it's really, really, really awesome. Like, let's check it out because like I really love the offspring. And I actually do not know their, I do not know their history, their story, and it's a strange history. It's a strange story. So let's check it out.
At the end of the day, the Offspring, more than anybody else, were the band that really put that style on the map for millions and millions of kids back in 1994. What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today we are here to talk about The Offspring, a band that really hasn't gotten the credit that they deserve for honestly being one of the most important bands in the entire history of punk. It's true. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't you say before that Pretty Fly for a White Guy is one of the worst songs ever made? And yes, I did say that, I do believe that, but it is still true. The Offspring did a lot for the culture. I kind of think about it this way. If Green Day...
Yes, the Offspring did so much for the culture because they actually made pop. Because like the Offspring is really a punk band, not a pop punk band. It sounds stupid, but like basically like pop punk and punk is kind of like there's like a small difference where like there is some identity lost within the art itself, right? When you try to do pop punk, right? Or rock punk or whatever, and they didn't lost this identity, but they became really, they offered punk that is mainstream and easily accessible and to a lot of people, and to a lot of people the Offspring was a getaway like an entry to actually rock music, which is actually really awesome. This is and for punk, and this is why they really deserve everything that they got, because like they really did a good job to make punk interesting, but they're interesting as well. And in general, like it is really a band that really offered an alternative for people that actually care, or even like people think about like when the Offspring was actually like popular, people that actually were scared of these bands, metal bands, rock bands, punk bands. Who are they? Like, is this some type of like dangerous, like is this dangerous for my kid to listen to this? It sounds stupid, but like, hey, like some songs, like some bands are actually like not the best inspiration to have when you're a kid. And basically the Offspring were basically like basically like able to make themselves like accessible enough for them to be understood, but also like they became liked by everyone because I don't know, they just did the thing, you know.
For the band that put the Bay Area style of pop punk on the map, then the Offspring were that for the Southern California sound, which 30 years later has proven to be by far the more important and influential style. And if you asked most people, including the members of the band, back in 1992 or something, if this would ever happen, they would have told you that you were crazy. So the question is, how exactly did this happen? How did they go from being just really one of 1,000 fairly obscure Southern California punk bands to selling over 15 million albums? And more importantly, what is their lasting influence, legacy, and impact? And also, why haven't they really gotten the credit that they deserve? Those are the questions that I will answer in this video. And also, I want to thank OneRep for sponsoring this video. OneRep is a platform that removes people's private records from over 100 people search sites and Google, which is important because what you may not realize is that people search sites like White Pages, My Life, and so forth expose your home address, phone number, information from your legal and property records, and a lot of other really sensitive data. And scammers can use that to do all kinds of things like open credit cards and accounts in your name, file fraudulent tax returns on your behalf, and so forth. This happened to one of my business partners, and trust me, it is an absolutely awful, nightmarish experience. Those data brokers also sometimes publish inaccurate information. So for example, someone does a background check on you and someone else's criminal record shows up associated with you. So if you want to help protect yourself against all that, you can do it with a subscription to OneRep. You'll strengthen your privacy and safety, dramatically reduce the risk of falling victim to identity theft and imposter scams, cut down on spam, and just get general peace of mind. Sign up with OneRep right now and get 60% off a 1-year plan with an exclusive offer for the viewers of my channel. Just go to the link in the description of this video. We are talking only $5.85 per month if you choose to protect yourself, and $11.95 a month if you sign up your whole family. And OneRep is backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you even have a trial period to see if it's right for you. So in order to answer those questions, let me start at the beginning, because the Offspring have actually been around for almost 40 years now, believe it or not. They started out way back in 1984 under the name Manic Subsidal. Not really sure what they were thinking of that one. Definitely not the world's best name. And they probably had the same thought because they changed their name in 1986 to The Offspring and put out their first album in 1989 on a label called Nemesis Records, which was really just like a small punk hardcore kind of label from Orange County that most people probably know for putting out bands like Chorus of Disapproval and Instead.
Like I'm slipping away, I can't hold on. Find that path alone. Just what's leading me away.
And although they don't really get a lot of credit for it now, the band was most definitely a part of the DIY punk scene of that era. Like if you look, there are some absolutely wild flyers from back then for shows they played with bands like Final Conflict and Infest, Agnostic Front, and Fugazi. My favorite one is Neurosis and Chumbawamba at Gilman Street, and the next day it's The Offspring. But the first time I remember seeing their name was around 1992 when they signed to Epitaph and put out their second album, Ignition. Epitaph was a much smaller label back then than it is now, but they still did a lot more to market their releases than just about any other punk label. So I remember seeing a lot of ads and reviews and stuff for this album in kind of the underground press sort of circuit. But still, it really didn't catch on beyond kind of their core fan base, so I think absolutely nobody was expecting what was about to happen. The band went from being essentially unknown outside of Southern California to being literally on top of the charts almost overnight in 1994 with the release of their third album, Smash, and specifically the song Come Out and Play, which went to #1 on Billboard, and I would say is still my favorite song by The Offspring. And they proved that they were more than one-hit wonder by following that up with Self-Esteem, which went to #4 on Billboard, and then Gotta Get Away, which went to #6. 3 back-to-back top 10 singles on one album. They were officially a mainstream success at this point. And before I go on, I really want to dive deep and give some context on this album and exactly why it was so important, because I think maybe people kind of sort of know this, but I've never really heard anybody talk about it. First of all, in hindsight, obviously Green Day ended up being the biggest band of that like mid-90s punk.
Yeah, but the difference is that like Green Day is pop punk, while Offspring kept the identity of punk. It is within the details, and it's really like if you're really into this, into music identity through visual, personal, like lifestyles, like fashion, but also messaging and how the music sounds itself. this is kind of the difference. Doesn't mean that Green Day is bad or in any way. It just means that like the Offspring really were able to do something that not a lot of bands were able to, which is actually become popular while keeping this punk identity untouched.
Punk explosion, but in 1994 or 95, that was definitely not clear. At that time, I would say it was kind of like a three-way tie between Green Day, The Offspring, and Rancid. And actually, of the three, The Offspring had charted the highest by a good margin. And although, as far as I'm aware, there wasn't any sort of rivalry or anything like that between those bands, in a sense, it really was kind of a showdown between the two big styles of pop punk at the time. On the one hand, you had Green Day and Rancid representing the Bay Area Lookout Records kind of style that was centered.
Green Day and Offspring feel so far away from each other. Like it's funny that like so it's more that like the Offspring is a band that is active for so long that Green Day got the time to become Green Day, right? Well, like it's just like kind of surprised me that like Green Day and Offspring were like, well, like yeah, no, both good bands.
Around the venue 924 Gilman Street with bands like Crimp Shrine, 15, Cringer, and Jawbreaker. And on the other hand, the Offspring sort of unofficially representing the Southern California sound, with the notable bands being Bad Religion, NoFX, Pennywise, Lagwagon, and so forth. And you may be saying to yourself, oh, that's interesting. Like, why have I never heard of these bands Crimp Shrine and 15? And that is exactly my point. At the time, the Bay Area scene was considered to be more credible and closer to quote unquote real punk by the, you know, punk establishment, whoever the people are that decide those sort of things at zines like Maximum Rock and Roll. But 30 years later, it's very clear that the Southern California style has really had more staying power and is a lot more relevant and popular. And obviously, Bad Religion played a big role there as well, but really, at the end of the day, the Offspring, more than anybody else, were the band.
Yeah, and for example, Bad Religion is exactly the type of band that is also like awesome band, like, but that wasn't able to actually become like attractive or like accessible to the majority, to the mainstream. Just to give you this example so you kind of like understand what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to be a purist in any way or like an elitist about like this is punk, this is pop punk, this is not punk, you know. No, it's just that like it's a question of identity and it's a question of career choices, basically career choices and artistic choices that led them to become like to have different status within like the art industry
And that really put that style,
the music industry, I mean,
on the map for millions and millions of kids back in 1994. And aside from just the impact of the Offspring themselves, the success of this album really made it possible for a whole generation of bands to succeed by changing the trajectory of Epitaph Records forever. For anybody who may not be familiar, just as a quick refresher, Epitaph was started by Brett Gurewitz, the guitarist and founder of Bad Religion, originally just to put out their albums and then kind of grew into a label that was bigger than that. And although it was certainly successful for a punk label of the early 90s, it was hardly like a big operation. They sold something like 25,000 copies of the previous Offspring album, which by today's standards would be pretty good, but back in the early 90s when people still bought physical media, that was not a lot of records. And so neither the label or the band really expected much more than that from this album. I think this interview with Dexter from 1994 really kind of sums it up. The possibility of us getting played on the radio or anything like that was pretty much non-existent, especially because this kind of music is not generally considered acceptable by the mainstream. So for something like this to happen, it really took us by surprise. Because keep in mind, at this point, there's really no evidence that punk was viable in the mainstream because this was still before Green Day had blown up, and the Offspring were still essentially a part-time band. Like, Noodles still had his job as a janitor at a high school in Anaheim. But still, after kind of taking off locally and then getting picked up on the radio all over the country, it ended up being a gigantic success. It sold over 6 million albums, and as far as I know, still stands as the best-selling indie release of all time. And with the money Epitaph made from that album, it enabled them to take chances on a lot of smaller artists like the Voodoo Glow Skulls and Agnostic Front. They put out a Tom Waits record. All these artists who they believed in creatively or or for being part of the scene, but clearly nobody thought they were gonna sell millions of albums. But they could do that because of the money that they had coming in from Smash. It also helped independent record stores survive. I think Brett Gurewitz put it really well. He said that this album raised the sea level for the whole punk community. Even if you think that the Offspring were shitty poser stuff for kids who shop at the mall, this album was still the entry point for millions and millions of kids to eventually get into quote unquote real punk.
Yeah, this is kind of like the mentality that like we as like artists and or fans, we have to kind of like go with like this idea of being a sellout, being a poser, being like a no, everything is art is art, and actually Offspring is like the least the example, the least example that like you can use to actually like try to talk about like being doing commercial music. These people, they actually like, you can see that they have fun, you can see that they are awesome, and you can see that like they do something really special, you know.
Like, how many kids heard Come Out and Play and then got into NoFX and Strung Out, and then maybe they checked out Crass and Black Flag or whatever? Or maybe they saw that the Offspring covered bands like The Digits, or later on they did a song with Jello Biafra. Personally, I can't really say that I'm a huge fan of their music, but I can definitely recognize what they did for the scene by helping so many people get into punk. With that said, as usual, the punk scene had to find a way to view somebody else's success as a negative.
It is always they're sellouts, and then the story goes by like this: they're sellouts. They're not real. They're actually like they're not for real. And then actually the band proved that they're for real, and then people are like, actually we're wrong. They're for real. Let's forget about it. And basically this is the story of like many bands. It's as stupid as that. Like the animosity in the music industry is basically a lot of this, like they're not for real, these people. And then the artists, it's actually no, because like there are like some sellouts, and this criticism is actually true. Like some people, like imagine you're doing as you're investing like your time and energy to actually leave a legacy within like a style genre that has a history, right? So people that like just come in and kind of like feel you feel that like they're not respecting of the roots of this style of music, I can understand. But because like the rock scene is really like a bunch of like just like really wholesome awesome people, basically it happens again and again, and each time it's like, are they for real, these people? Because it will be sad if it's not, if they're just a bunch of sellouts. And a lot of the times like it goes like this: well, they keep working, they keep selling albums, they keep like do touring, they do lives, they do feats, and then people are like, yeah, they're for real, and then they get accepted into like the within like they get accepted, and they don't like get this victimized of criticism.
Of course, along with Green Day and Rancid, they were added to the list of bands that real punks had to hate. And I remember the legendary 80s Southern California punk band Agent Orange in particular got really upset because they felt like that one surf guitar kind of part from Come Out and Play was a little too similar to their song from 1981 called Bloodstains. Which I personally thought was kind of stupid, because as the Vandals pointed out in their song about it called Aging Orange, that's really just the Phrygian scale.
So after a thought and a panel of experts, I came up with a brilliant little plan. I'll take out my frustration.
Yeah, you can imagine like these people are like, are you copying me? Is this like, but at the same time, like it's you have to understand like the music industry is such a poor industry, like and usually like people that are successful in it, not everyone is successful like with 17 albums and and that are like multi-platinum with multi-platinum CDs, you know, and recognition of like the world recognition, you know. And so people that like and sometimes like there's a lot of cases where actually like artists just kind of like rip off like formulas, like songs that like were popular, are popular in some ways, and just like tinker them, so change them a little bit in some ways, and they get a hit sometimes. And this is kind of like the part where it's like, are you for real? Because like to be honest, like sometimes it can be a homage, you know, a tribute, like a way to be like, yeah, this song is awesome, we wanted to, like the artist is like, yeah, we wanted to actually like offer like kind of like a proof of respect, you know, like something like this. It's not that complicated once you get into it. It's just like a bunch of people that like you just have to understand, like there's a lot of it's a lot of about like respect and actually like well, credibility, and also like gaining and reputation. And basically like each time there's a lot of bands like start off from nothing, and they actually have to build their reputation. I'll give you another example, like within the music industry, a lot of artists need to build a reputation as good workers, as good colleagues, because like basically like if you want to do touring is actually quite visceral when it comes to, it's quite violent when it comes to like working like work conditions. And basically like there are some artists that like really do act as divas, right? And some artists that actually like really just like do the stuff, and basically like doing music is a lot closer to your dead-end job. So delivery, fast food, or I don't know, office job than you will think, because it's basically like everything is scheduled and you have to do it on time. The only thing is that like the schedule is not like never really exactly the same. You have to travel a lot, but basically like on like the day of the show, like you have to be ready at this point, you have to be sociable. Like there's also like this part within the music industry that people don't understand, is that like you have to be like you have to be like basically like someone nice to be around, because like if you're not someone nice to be around, you're not someone nice to work with. And you know, like all these songs, especially in rock and metal, they sing about like drugs and alcohol and like getting fucked up, having a messed up life. Well, a lot of people, they do that. And do you know what how difficult it is to actually like work with like people that are like drug addicts? Well, it is not the simplest thing, and usually like it can happen. And like it happened that like some bands, they actually like got the chance to actually do touring, become like popular, and basically like they never got a second chance because they were like too complicated to work with. And not because their music was bad, and not because like they were bad people. It's just because like they were complicated to work with, or like just like mean, like disrespectful to the people within the industry. It can happen, like, and it has nothing to do with music.
But could you really expect anything else from boomer punks? In any case, regardless of whether you like this album or not, the point that I am making here is that this album was a big deal for punk. Every bit as big as Dookie. Which brings us to their next album, Ixnay on the Hombre from 1997, which put them in the...
I love the fact that like The Offspring, they really have this vibe, the Mexicano vibe, canal. They really have like kind of like this California, but like really Latino, with like a touch of Latino, you know, like within their music. And I really like that. It's really unique. It's really like people don't really think too much about it, but like there's a lot of like Mexicana like type of like almost like type of like love that they just like sing about.
Kind of difficult position of having to follow up on this giant mainstream success. Everyone was wondering, could they keep the momentum going, or was that one album really all they had in them? Were they just kind of in the right place at the right time? And as history will now show, they answered that question with this album, which was kind of complicated by the fact that they left Epitaph over disputes with Brett Gurewitz. They ended up signing to Columbia Records. But in spite of all that, the album went to number 9 on Billboard, and the single Gone Away was another mainstream hit.
Feels like I am far
Maybe
away.
not quite as big as Come Out and Play or Low Self-Esteem, but still a big song, and the album did go platinum and showed that they had staying power and that they were more than just a punk band. Like, I would consider Gone Away to be more of what you would call like a rock song that got picked up by a lot of radio stations that maybe wouldn't typically play a punk band. And with their continued success, they brought even more people into the scene. Which brings us to their next album, Americana, in 1998, which was arguably the peak of their mainstream relevance. Smash may be the fan favorite, but I think if you look now, it's worth noting that 3 of their top 5 most streamed songs are from this album. Which personally, I kind of question why. This album is best known for the song Pretty Fly for a White Guy, which I understand.
I used to have a band and we used to sing Pretty Fly for a White Guy. We did a couple concerts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6. Yeah, I used to play that with my band back in high school.
It is an ironic song, it's a self-parody, whatever, but still, this is one of the most irritating songs of all time to me.
And all the girlies
Sorry, Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
But who really gives a shit what I think, right? Because regardless of my personal opinion, this song was a gigantic hit. It's super catchy, it was a huge song, it went to number 1 in I think like 9 or 10 countries. Most of them in Europe, which I think validates everything that I've ever said about Europeans and their terrible.
If you're a fan of Sum 41, like Pretty Fly for a White Guy is kind of like into deep version of The Offspring, you know? Or yeah, like I think that like it's the same vibe. If you know, you know.
Taste in music. This album was also the first time where I'd say that they really changed up their style a bit. Up until this point, they'd really continued to play pretty straightforward Southern California style pop punk that, other than better production, really didn't sound all that different from their first album. But with this one, they went, I guess you would say, a little bit more pop, added in some sort of other elements like different kinds of percussion and stuff. Personally, I think this album is a little bit more corny and cartoonish than their earlier stuff, but I can also recognize why it's their most accessible. For example, like the horns and percussion in Why Don't You Get a Job? They also got a pre-fame Zooey Deschanel in the video.
Why don't you get a job? Don't you like? It always makes me think that like it's a Christmas song. I need to point this out. I'm not into Christmas songs, and like, don't you think that like, don't you get a job? Wait, let me check. It is don't you get a job, but like I need to just like. Yeah, don't you get a job? Like it sounds like Christmas. It sounds like Christmas, right? Right? It's not just me, right? Like because of that, like I never really quite liked the song. Not because it's a bad song, just because it sounds like Christmas. And I'm like, I don't know. Sounds too much like Christmas for me, man. Like
Video for She's Got Issues, dressed like she's Ramona Flowers. Very, very 90s look. They also started to do more kind of larger pop culture stuff, which I get the sense that they kind of sort of resisted a little bit before.
what was
Dressed like she is a pre-fame Zooey Deschanel in Why Don't You Get a Job? They also got a pre-fame Zooey Deschanel in the video for She's Got Issues, dressed like she is.
Wait. Never saw this clip.
Ramona Flowers. Very, very 90s look. They also started to do more kind of larger pop culture stuff, which I get the sense that they kind of sort of resisted a little bit before. Like, if you notice, they never did the whole late night talk show circuit that a lot of bands did, which I'm sure they had lots of offers for. For example, they were on the soundtrack to the game Crazy Taxi, which I remember playing a ton on Dreamcast until I just got absolutely sick of their song, but it was a great game. They all
This is cool as fuck. Like, there is like a couple bands that like just like participated in like some video games, and as a way to promote themselves, but as a way also like to kind of like share the love, you know. And this was the coolest thing. These days it's not the same, you know, like the big artists like actually like in video games. It still happens, but it's not the same. Like,
also had a cameo in the movie Idle Hands, the kind of horror comedy movie with Seth Green and Jessica Alba, where Dexter gets his scalp ripped off by a disembodied hand while wearing an AFI shirt. And speaking of AFI, this is also when Nitro Records really came into its prime, which is a label founded by Dexter and Greg from The Offspring in 1994, and had bands like Rufio, Guttermouth, and Jughead's Revenge, and most notably also put out everything from AFI up to and including the All Hallows EP. Basically all of the punk era AFI releases. And for sure, AFI was going to be big regardless of what label they were on, because they're just that good and the guys in the band are that smart. But at the same time, the fact that Nitro was able to use the Offspring's platform to give them a little bit of a boost had to help, right? For example, him wearing their shirt in Idle Hands, or the Offspring covering AFI on the soundtrack for the Jim Carrey movie Me, Myself, and Irene.
It's rage I cannot let go.
And of course,
okay, what's the song?
movie Me, Myself, and Irene. Offspring covering AFI on the soundtrack for
Oh,
the
it's
Jim
a
Carrey
cover of
movie Me,
AFI.
Myself, and Irene.
It's rage I cannot let go.
And of course, as most of you know, AFI went on to be one of the most important bands of the 2000s and themselves did a ton to help the punk and hardcore scene. So again, I think you have to kind of give the Offspring some of the credit there for facilitating that to some extent. Nitro also put out a ton of classic punk bands like TSOL, The Damned, and The Vandals. And if you look at what the label has put out, it seems pretty clear to me that their goal was never really to like make a ton of money. It was really just to put out what they thought were great bands. And the money they made and the platform that they had with the Offspring really was just a way to help facilitate that. Nitro doesn't really get a ton of credit for it, I don't think, but honestly, they were one of the best labels of the 90s. Which brings us to what I would call the end of the Offspring's most relevant era, with Conspiracy of One from 2000. This one doesn't seem to be very popular with the fandom, but if I personally had to choose one Offspring album to listen to, I think it would be this one. Because to me, it's the one that sounds the most like a typical 90s Fat Records or Epitaph band. Like some band you would see play with Good Riddance and Pulley or something. I don't know if it was a conscious decision or just kind of worked out this way, but it seemed like they dropped most of the like goofy, cartoonish kind of stuff from Americana, with the exception of the song Original Prankster, which I think of as kind of like Pretty Fly Part 2. It's honestly a really good album.
Until the break of
Time does flood, and on to one another. Time, then better.
And although the band never went away and of course continued to do well, they put out several more albums, including one that actually just came out last year that I didn't even know about until
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like, they have like this kind of like Americana, Mexicana kind of like vibe that like he doesn't talk about, no one talks about, like no one ever like kind of like, no one cared, but like it's really because of how respectful it is. But like it's really like they have like this no Spanish, but like really Mexican type of vibe, and that they added to their song. And like no one ever like really like, even I never saw even a comment about it. Well, it's really like obvious, and I think it's because like how much they're respectful of like, and how visible it is that like they love this the Mexican culture.
I made this video. I think after this album, they were clearly past their prime, both commercially and in terms of their relevance. So I'm just kind of gonna lump all that together. And by the way, that is not a criticism. Like, it happens to literally everyone, because nobody can stay at the top forever, right? So that brings us to the last question. What is their lasting impact, influence, and legacy? Well, on the one hand, I don't really hear a lot of people mention The Offspring as a direct musical influence like you do Green Day. Like, I don't hear a lot of people say, oh, The Offspring, that's the band that inspired us to start playing music. But on the other hand, with tens of millions of albums sold, like, I'm sure there are plenty of people who would say exactly that. But to me, their influence is more about what Brett from Epitaph said, that they raised the sea level for punk as a whole, along with Green Day and Rancid. Like I said, in particular for that Southern California style, which in hindsight ended up being by far the most important and influential version of punk, at least in the mainstream sense.
I think that like one other thing that like he didn't talk about is their new albums, and their new albums are like, well, I don't know, they have like a more like a different vibe, a different color to it, but it is still The Offspring, and it is still good, and it is still something really interesting to listen to, and really something really inspiring.
I think their success also paved the way for that late 90s and early 2000s pop punk explosion, the what I call TRL bands like Newfound Glory, Blink-182, and Sum 41. And I say that because if you actually take a step back, I think that both sonically and culturally, they were a lot closer to those bands than Green Day were, who really seemed like they wanted nothing to do with any of that. Like, they almost thought they were too good for it. And personally, although I don't really love their music, I've always appreciated that they seem like really humble, chill, smart guys. For example, Dexter going back to school to finish his PhD in molecular biology in 2017, which
this is such an alpha move.
obviously he didn't need to do. He's already rich and famous. It's not like he's gonna go work in the field. It's just that he seems to really love the subject and love education, and he wanted to pursue that, which I think is pretty cool. And really, in hindsight,
and I think it shows like, I think that like it shows a good example, you know, like just as an example of what can happen even after fame and money, you know.
Maybe more than any of those other 90s bands, they really never walked away from punk as a sound or a culture. And think of how many millions of kids got into punk because of them. So next time you think of bands that made a real contribution to punk, make sure that you have The Offspring on that list. All right, my friends, that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments of this video. Also, as always,
thank you so much, the Punk Rock MBA, for this video. The Punk Rock MBA, if you're into the stories, he does it for like a lot of rock bands, emo bands, like new metal, death metal bands, like, and some more mainstream bands, like so yeah, you should check it out. Like, offer offer him a chance. Is a fucking legend. This guy he is that good. He is that good. All right. Let me. You know what? Kind of got inspired to like usually Okay.
My creativity was dying when I was using drugs.
Okay. Let me just get this real fast. 1, 2. I'll be right back in a minute. Just give me a minute. All right. Yeah, this got me. I want to check out something more about music. So, Punk Rock MBA, subscribe if you do not know him. If you know him, it doesn't matter. Is if you like music. Oh, actually, it talks about baby metal. That's actually fucking sick. Actually, like this band. Let me just. I need to sort this out. I'm fucking god. Right. So, yeah, the Punk Rock MBA, the strange history of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Ever heard of the Red Hot Chili Peppers? Me neither. First time I've ever heard of this band. I actually do not know. I actually love a lot of their songs, and I love what they represent in general. So let's check it out.
Creativity was dying when I was using drugs.
What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today we are here to talk about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who, now that I think about it, are probably the single most successful alternative rock band of all time. And their roots go way back to the early LA punk rock scene, where they came up seeing bands like Black Flag, X, and the Germs. And then when they started their band, they took that attitude, injected a little bit of George Clinton-inspired funk, and created something totally fresh and new. And they had no real intention or ambition of being anything more than just another LA punk band. But 40 years later, here they are. Over 120 million albums sold, 6 Grammys won, countless other awards, and still hitting the very top of the Billboard charts. And what I think is really
And they still release songs as of today.
interesting is that despite all of that, they get essentially zero attention or respect from the critics. And personally, I will admit that I'm not the biggest fan of their newer material, but the honest truth is that they're kind of the uncrowned kings of alternative rock and by far some of the very best musicians of this whole generation. And so the question is, how did they do it? How did they go from a struggling punk band to one of the biggest bands in the history of rock? And what is their lasting impact and influence? Those are the questions that I will answer in this video. But first, if you haven't, please check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming twice a week from 4 to 7 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there's a link to that in the description of this video. The Red Hot Chili Peppers started out way back in 1982 when the original core lineup of Anthony Kiedis, Flea, and Hilo Slovak met at Fairfax High School. And the three of them quickly became best friends, basically living like wild animals, just partying, doing drugs, going to clubs that they were way too young to get into, and going to see punk bands at the time like Devo, Blondie, and the Germs. And after hearing a band called Defunct, they were inspired to start their own band that combined punk rock with funk. And for their name, they chose Tony Flo and the Miraculous Masters of Mayhem. Probably a good thing they didn't keep that one. Somewhere along the way, they changed it to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The exact origin of who came up with the name seems to be something they argue about. But either way, they started playing local shows around LA and quickly started to get noticed in the scene, as well as local media outlets like LA Weekly. They also got a fair amount of attention from the punk scene, since Flea was also playing bass in Fear, who were really in the spotlight at the time, after their notorious performance on Saturday Night Live, where they brought 50 punks along with them who basically trashed the set. And speaking of Fear, within a year or so of forming, they recorded their first demo with Spit Stacks, the drummer of Fear, featuring a lot of songs that would end up being on their first album, like Out in LA, which was kind of like an autobiography about the wild life that they were living around the Los Angeles area.
Oh, LA's the place, that's my mind blaze. For me at the race, through a cotton picking maze. For you at the James, but I lose you in the haze. And now you spend your days catching waves and you check to go out.
And listening to that now, what I find really amazing is that number one, they were all like 19 or 20 years old at the time, but also that Flea had only learned bass like 2 years before recording this. He had played.
Yeah, like one of like the, let's say not strange, but like odd legacies that the Red Hot Chili Peppers actually left is actually the popularization of funk. Like basically there's a lot of like people that like got to learn what the fuck is funk, basically punk but like funky, you know, basically thanks to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So yeah.
Trumpet before that, and even then he was better than most bassists to this day. And they gave out these demos around LA without any real goal besides just playing slightly bigger shows, but their party vibe and stage presence just couldn't be denied. There was one early show in particular that really changed everything for them, where they brought out their signature move of playing wearing nothing but socks, and the right people noticed. As Anthony Kiedis put it, when we walked back on stage wearing only the socks, the crowd audibly gasped. We weren't deterred for one moment by the collective state of shock that the audience was experiencing. And one of the people in their crowd that day was their first manager, who took them on as a client and really helped them to graduate from that status of just a local band playing parties. Their momentum kept building. They got to play some bigger shows, like opening for Danny Elfman's band Oingo Boingo. And in late 1983, they signed to EMI Records, home of the Sex Pistols. They were thrilled to to finally get into a real studio with a real budget, and they got Andy Gill of the British post-punk band Gang of Four to produce their debut album, which came out in 1984. As excited as they were to work with him, unfortunately they butted heads with him a lot, quite a bit in the studio, and to be honest, it kind of shows on the album. As Anthony Kiedis said years later, all those songs sounded like they had gone through a sterilizing goody two-shoes machine. When we used to play them, they were so vicious sounding, and now they sounded like bubblegum pop. The album got mixed reviews and it didn't sell well, but they did get another chance to go into the studio, this time with the legendary funk musician George Clinton as producer, to record their second album, Freaky Styley. Personally, I think this album is definitely a step forward, but still, honestly, it's not great. With that said, their momentum was clearly building. For example, they got a cameo in the iconic 1980s skate movie Thrashin'.
Fabulous Red Hot Chili Peppers, the band that gets your pulses pounding, your senses reeling, and sets your mouth on fire.
Which brings us to what is, in my opinion, the first album to really capture the greatness of the early Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is the Uplift Mofo Party Plan from 1987. It was really
Yeah, and this is like more funk. Like, this is like not punk. Like, this is not even rock. And this could be like, this is more like hippie music. To me, like, I do not connect with it. But like, to its own, you know, like, I think that like, but I think that like, what's really interesting about like the Red Hot Chili Peppers is just like how rich within like their musical vocabulary they are, you know, like they've done so many different things.
Funky with a ton of groove and that upbeat late 80s kind of energy that when I listen to it, it just makes me feel like one of the kids in those Bugle Boy ads from when I was in 5th grade. It's just a really fun album, and honestly, it might be my favorite thing they've ever done, even though objectively they do have better albums.
I'm here today to talk about the Uplift Mofo Party Plan, a plan based on a band.
But for all the fun, good time, party vibes of the album, what fans couldn't see is that the band had a huge problem that was tearing them apart, namely heroin. And drugs were not a new thing for them because pretty much the whole band had been using drugs in one form or another since the very beginning. Some coke before a show, some downers to get to sleep afterwards, maybe a few drinks, but there were 2 members of the band that went a little bit harder than everyone else.
My creativity was dying when I was using drugs.
First of all, Anthony Kiedis' heroin use had become a huge problem for the band, to the point where he would show up to practice or recording sessions literally asleep. And eventually Flea confronted him saying, "Anthony, we're kicking you out of the band. We want to play music and you obviously don't, so you have to go. We're going to go get a different singer and go on, so you're out of here." Getting kicked out of the band that he started was enough of a wake-up call that he did go to rehab and the band took him back. Although he did fall back into his addiction within a couple months, he was at least semi-functional, to the point where the band was able to carry on. As he put it, "I was still carrying around that 1 foot on a banana peel, 1 foot in the grave energy, but I was trying to be respectful of this new place in my life." Their guitarist Hilo Slovak was unfortunately not able to keep it together. And on June 25th, 1988, he died of a heroin overdose. And understandably, this almost tore the band apart.
Devastated beyond, almost impossible to actually fully digest a loss of that size. I don't think any of us ever really thought that that would happen.
Hillel was their best friend, a core part of the music. People around the band blamed Anthony for his death, and their drummer Jack Irons quit the band saying, "This is not where I want to be. I do not want to be part of something where my fucking friends are dying." And as tragic as that moment was, Flea and Anthony ultimately decided to keep the band going. After trying out a few replacements, including D.H. Peligro from Dead Kennedys on drums, they ultimately landed on what most people would consider their classic lineup, with Chad Smith on drums and John Frusciante on guitar. And they quickly started working on what would be their first real breakthrough album, Mother's Milk, which came out in 1989 and featured 2 breakout songs. The first was kind of a funk metal cover of Higher Ground by Stevie Wonder, and the other was an original song reflecting on the band's struggle with addiction called Knock Me Down. And despite being only 18 years old at the time, their new guitarist John Frusciante was a musical genius, and it was obvious how much he added to the band. And with all due respect to Hillel Slovak and Jack Irons, this album was just on another level than anything else they had done. So it's interesting that after recording it, the band didn't necessarily love it. As Anthony put it, we didn't finish that record and say, this is our best album ever. With that being said, Mother's Milk was a success. It quickly went gold. They got the kind of radio and MTV airplay that had eluded them before, and it seemed like the band was on the verge of something big. Which brings us to their fifth album, Blood Sugar Sex Magik, in 1991, which changed everything for the band. They had just signed to Warner Brothers after a bidding war. They got the legendary Rick Rubin to produce their album. Their new lineup was fully gelled with John on guitar. The band was just firing on all cylinders, and it showed. It felt like for the past few years, they'd been sort of teetering on the edge of a mainstream breakthrough, and that finally came with the second single from Blood Sugar Sex Magik, Under the Bridge, which was once again about drugs, specifically about Anthony Kiedis shooting up under a bridge in downtown LA.
I don't ever wanna feel like I did that day.
And on the back of that song, the album hit number 2 on Billboard. The Red Hot Chili Peppers went on tour with Nirvana and Pearl Jam. When those bands were the hottest thing on the planet, they had officially arrived as a mainstream success. And personally, I consider this album to be just an absolute masterpiece. And that 3-album streak of The Uplift Mofo Party Plan, Mother's Milk, and Blood Sugar Sex Magik is just...
And to the mainstream generation like mine, like to the people that like got to discover them like later on, when they were already like the legends that they are, this is the album that people usually know, like, and that people actually like know the songs of.
Incredible. Like, all 3 of those albums are 10s in my book. And it's also worth noticing that they sounded just completely different from almost every other alternative band at the time. As one review put it, they were one of the very few genre-bending bands that were able to make a radical impact on the sonic landscape that was dominated, it seemed, from every minute angle by grunge. But with all of that success, unfortunately, drug addiction reared its head again for the band. John Frusciante had secretly started using heroin to cope with the pressures of fame, saying to Anthony, "We're too popular. I don't need to be at this level of success. I would just be proud to be playing this music in clubs like you guys were doing 2 years ago." Fans didn't know about that part, but something was clearly off, culminating in their bizarre appearance on Saturday Night Live, where John seemed to deliberately play Under the Bridge in the wrong key.
Nobody out there, hard to believe that I'm all alone.
And that may sound like some crazy conspiracy theory, but remember, we're talking about John Frusciante here. He is a legit musical genius that does not make those kind of mistakes. And all of that eventually culminated in him suddenly leaving the band while they were on tour in Japan. They replaced him with former Jane's Addiction guitarist Dave Navarro, while John spiraled into depression, living in honestly really sad, disgusting conditions in his house, just like piled high with garbage and drug paraphernalia, as his addiction got worse and worse, which brought the band to what I think of as really their second era, starting with One Hot Minute in 1995, which was quite a bit darker and less funky than Blood Sugar Sex Magik.
My friends are so distressed and stay.
One Hot Minute was generally seen as kind of a disappointing follow-up, and as big of a fan as I was of Blood Sugar Sex Magik, I personally didn't like this album at all. And to this day, it seems to be one of the fans' overall least favorite albums. And their relationship with Dave Navarro was also falling apart for various other reasons. As he put it, one was my drug use at the time, the other was musical differences. Anthony says it was because I tripped and fell over an amp while on drugs. I say that he was on more drugs than me at that point. We both had a loose relationship with reality. Who do you want to believe? With their last album being a disappointment and their lineup once again in shambles due to drugs, it seemed like the band was maybe ready to call it a day. Another promising band torn apart by addiction. But if addiction is the common thread underlying all of the Chili Peppers' problems, overcoming addiction was their salvation. Some of their friends convinced John Frusciante to go to rehab, and in 1998, he rejoined the Red Hot Chili Peppers, restoring what most people would consider to be the band's best lineup, and setting the stage for their comeback album Californication in 1999, featuring the lead single Scar Tissue.
Wave goodbye to my empire, 'cause with the birds of shade.
And I almost look at this album as Blood Sugar Sex Magic Part 2. With the same lineup, Rick Rubin once again back as producer, and a similar sound, just a little bit darker and more melodic. And nobody really knew if the Red Hot Chili Peppers could come back and reclaim their former spot, but that is exactly what
Californication is such a love letter to the youth of this era, because video game, but also such a revolutionary like music video, because like it basically like shows a video game that like doesn't exist, but like it is such an interesting take. And it's such, you know, like when you play, like when everyone fucking tell you like playing video games, being a no life, is something of like, it's not cool, you know, it's not cool to be a nerd, right? To see that like a band like Red Hot Chili Peppers like do a music video like this, really, it's something like for a lot of youth, I think, that like not only me felt concerned, because there's some adults, you know, like do music and they actually understand that like it's cool, the video game thing, you know, because back then, like now video games are mainstream, like everyone knows about video games, and people do not fucking like get bullied as much like for being nerds, right? But like back then, I was like basically like part of like the group that like was liking this hobby, and it felt really nice that like a band with so much recognition actually did a music video using this media. It sounds like nothing, but is to some think about like some kid that like got told that like is lame and is weird for liking video games all his life, and then the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they released a song called Californication, and it's a video game, and this kid, he sees that like the one of the most popular bands that ever existed, to find it cool, video games. It sounds stupid, but like it's something that like the youth and people that actually care, and people that actually like people that struggle with are actually like listening to, and actually like it helps, you know, it really does.
They did. The album hit number 3 on Billboard and has sold over 11 million copies worldwide. To this date, their most commercially successful album, and consistently in the top 3 of their fans' favorite albums. And so if anybody doubted them, this album proved that the Red Hot Chili Peppers were officially back, rounding out the decade with an appearance at the very ill-fated Woodstock 99 festival, which was sadly defined by the riots and the fires as much as it was the music. They followed up Californication with By the Way in 2002, which is probably my personal least favorite album of theirs. It's not that it's bad, it just, in my opinion, doesn't really sound like the Chili Peppers, which is because unlike their previous albums, which tended to be more of a collaboration from jam sessions, this album was written almost entirely by John Frusciante, who drew a lot of inspiration from English post-punk bands like The Smiths, Gang of Four, and Susie Sue, and you can really hear that in songs like Universally Speaking, that sound less like Red Hot Chili Peppers funk songs and almost more like The Strokes. And this once again made tensions flare up within the band, with Flea wanting to play more of their classic funk sound and John pushing in the other direction. But they were able to put all of that aside, and after a massive 2-year-long world tour from 2002 to 2004, they came back with Stadium Arcadium in 2006, which was another return to form for them. The funk was back.
Oh my,
It was
Johnny
also their first album to hit #1 on Billboard, which is pretty incredible for a band that's 20
California
years
is
deep into their
just-
career at this point, especially considering all the ups and downs that they had already had. But unfortunately, as seems to always be the case with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, that stability was short-lived. After an extended break where a lot of the members pursued various side projects, John Frusciante once again left the band in 2008. Which brings me to what I would consider the lowest period of the band, the era where Josh Klinghoffer replaced John Frusciante on guitar, I'm With You in 2011, and The Gateway in 2016. And these albums both hit #2 on Billboard, so they were successful in that regard. But when I listen to it, I don't know, they just don't really stand out in any way. There's nothing wrong with them, but there's really nothing right with them either. And most fans seem to agree that these albums are just kind of middle of the road. Which brings us to more or less the present day.
I think that like the middle of the road, good, bad, like art is art, like, and it's something that is really like for anyone to observe and like or not, you know. It's more of a like there is no ratings. I think that like rating songs or rating like it's kind of like try to rate the painting, you know, like try to rate the music. It's if you like this genre, this style of music, this genre, like, well, you will love it. If you don't, you won't. If you're a fan of like the artist, like you will be biased. And I think that like this whole like rating, like some albums they were like mid, and some albums they were like, I think that like everything that like an artist, especially like when you see how much effort they need to put to even get there, like is something worth of some type of recognition.
Yet another rise, fall, and rise again for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. After 3 albums without John Frusciante, in 2019, the Chili Peppers announced that he was rejoining the band once again for the 3rd time, and that Josh Klinghoffer was leaving.
It seemed like I had changed and grown enough as a person to where it felt like it would be a beautiful thing to have another chance to do it right. I was seeing Anthony and Flea and Chad through a different lens than I had seen them through when I quit.
And just for the record, Josh says it was completely amicable, and in his words, it's absolutely John's place to be in that band. So that's why I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he's back with them. And to be completely honest, he's right. The Chili Peppers just weren't the Chili Peppers without John, and that became obvious when they released their album Unlimited Love in 2022, which was very clearly the best thing they had done since Stadium Arcadium, and it really felt like another return to form. And fans seem to agree with that with the album debuting at #1 on Billboard. And this was followed closely by another album, The Return of the Dream Canteen, which was a collection of songs recorded at the same time as Unlimited Love. They initially wanted to release this as something like a 7-disc set, which the label shot down, and they compromised on doing it this way as 2 separate albums. And to me, Return of the Dream Canteen kind of feels like a collection of B-sides, although for the record, the band insists that that is not the case. And Black Summer, the lead single from Unlimited Love, was their 14th song to hit #1 on the alternative charts, which is unmatched by any other artist. And amazingly, 40 years into their career, it seems like they are as relevant as ever. Which brings us to the last question: what is their lasting impact and influence? And to me, this is a little bit of a weird one, because for such a massively successful band, you don't really hear any artists mentioning them as a direct influence in the same way as you do with other huge alternative bands like Green Day, Linkin Park, or 9 Inch Nails. So I'm sure that the Chili Peppers were a gateway band for millions and millions of kids to get into music, but I can't say that I really hear a lot of their influence.
I think that like once you pass like once you are so influential that like basically like people do not mention you, like I think it's a different type stardom status. I don't know if you understand. If you get me, you get me.
Influence on music these days. And at the same time, I also think that they're kind of underrated in the sense that, objectively speaking, they are clearly the undisputed kings of alternative rock, because there is really just nobody bigger than them, and I don't really think they get credit for that. And I think we also have to talk about the simple fact that they are some of the absolute best musicians in all of rock. Anthony isn't the most talented vocalist in the world, as I'm sure he would admit, but when it comes to Flea, John, and Chad, all three of them are just insanely talented and have that kind of musical chemistry that just cannot be denied. All right, my friends, that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. And
all right, thank you so much, punk rock, to the punk rock NBA for this. It was awesome. Subscribe to him, leave him, and give him some love if you're into that. All right. All right, an honest trailer. Dota 2. I play Dota 2. I love Dota 2. Let's check out the honest trailer of Dota 2.
The following trailer is rated H for honest.
From the company that sells you the mods you used to get for free and the developer equivalent of Banksy comes the game that put the esports in ESPN, Defense of the Ancients 2. But his friends call him Dota. Dive into the Coca-Cola Classic to League of Legends Pepsi, Smite's Dr. Pepper, and Heroes of the Storm.
This is so true.
Mountain Dew? Where gods and demons do battle on a fantasy football field
It's
in an
such a
eternal war where
no
allegiance doesn't matter, except for Roshan Advantage.
The old interface.
Roshan has fallen to the
Yo,
As you use skill
Roshan.
and teamwork to destroy your opponent's big glowy thing, then do it all over again, forever. Spend hundreds of hours.
Oh my fucking god, this fucking interface. I am so old. This game is so old. Look at this fucking like interface. It's like when the update went up, it's like, so this doesn't exist anymore. This is like, it's like you get to see like the full screen. It's like, what the fuck? Like the icons were so different. Oh my fucking god, this is such wow.
Before you even begin to understand what the is going on. With gameplay that takes an entire puberty to master, and a community that's just as toxic as League of Legends. Only this time, everyone's Russian.
Shut up! Or European idiot, you're a stupid boy.
Let's go! Please kill yourself, okay?
Voice Russian man! Fucking Russian man!
Choose from a massive roster of 110 characters, 5 of which you'll see in every match. Or ruin the fun for everyone by picking techies. Then battle it out with heroes who are one name change away from a Blizzard lawsuit, like not Sylvanas, not Brawl, not a Wisp, and not a Hydralisk, who unlike LoL are free to play from the start, but just like LoL, are not free to dress up in cute little hats. That's gonna cost you, sucker. Prepare your bed pad.
Yeah, some items in Dota like it costs like thousands. It's because like the market is similar to CS:GO, right? And it's like some items they're so useless. Some sets they cost so much.
As you enter matches that last more than an hour and a half, on top of all the time it takes to learn the hero matchups, laning strategies, and item builds, then get reported into the low priority queue anyway. You probably deserved it though. I mean, look at this scum. It's feeding the bloodsugar again. Ah, damn it. Now I spilled my pee bottle. Shit. Reported, stupid motherfucker. Train your mind, your wrists, and absolutely nothing else until you join the pale, sickly ranks of the professional Dota world. Featuring awesome perks like $18 million prize pools, sponsorships, and confusing the hell out of jocks who are just trying to watch a SportsCenter rerun. as you experience the surreal magic of an entire stadium cheering for a LAN party. Finally, something we can beat China at. USA, USA, USA. So close your blinds, tell your mom you have scarlet fever, and gather some friends you don't mind losing as you turn your back on the outside world for the only thing that really matters. Arguing why Dota is better than LoL in the YouTube comment section.
This is so true.
Starring First Ban, Warframe, Anti-Fun, Young Captain Crunch, Siamese Shreks, Gaben, Spy Detection, Somebody Skipped Leg Day, Disco Ball, Gandalf, Sick Wave Brah, RNGesus, What's Wrong With Your Face, The Green Goblin, Sideburns, Jackie Chan, Melina, Shovel Knight, Man Bear Pig, The Coneheads, a whole bunch of glowy skeleton thingies, The $6 Million Slam, and
one song.
Base Hunter.
Nella diventa di spela di Dota, tu ci puoi spiegare, non molto me pelege.
MOBA 2, Electric Dodaloo. Easiest game of my life. Go on, ask me what my MMR is. Ask. My EPN is huge compared to your Oh, damn it! What just happened? Reported.
For real, if you like the band that like you just showed, Bass Hunter, actually some songs, they're really fucking dope. Like, and not about Dota. They're really like, you gotta check it out. Oh, that was a pleasure. That was such a refreshing thing. Thank you, Honest Game Trailer. If you never saw Honest Game Trailer, like, it's awesome. Like, subscribe to them and like, alright. Okay. Right. Oh my fucking god, why is my camera fucking frozen again? Wait. Huh? Okay, I think I understood why. Maybe? I don't know. All right. That's it for the stream for today. Thank you so much for coming by. Thank you so much, Blueberry, for the gifted subs. I'll see you another time, and as always, be toxic.